Hey there, welcome to today's episode. This episode is meant to be a companion episode with a blog post that I put up about how to reduce worry. As firefighter spouses, we often worry a lot, and big emotions that we label as negative, are really important to learn how to process and to work with. And this episode in particular, I'm not going to talk about how we worry so much, or actually, it's more about a specific worry that oftentimes we have. I hear this a lot from clients, that one of the worries that we have is how to help our firefighter when they have a difficult call, how to help them process that. We know about things like PTSD, and we know about trauma responses, and what do we do as people who love them to help them? Of course, we want to help. They are helpers. We are helpers. So I wanted to really give you some actionable things and tips that you can use to really work with how to support your firefighter when they have a difficult call. Life is full of negative emotions, but especially when it comes to our spouse going on very difficult calls. And the ones that I hear about the most are oftentimes if they involve young children, especially, or maybe even children that are the same age as the firefighters' children. I know one that really my spouse will have a hard time with is when they go in and see kind of vulnerable adults who are just living in some really terrible conditions. Like their life is just really overwhelming, literally all around them. So I don't want to paint too much of a picture in your head, because I think you know what I mean. And probably me even mentioning it, you're experiencing an increased feeling of arousal, increased feeling of emotional response. And this isn't intended, and you do have to be careful when you're talking about these things, that we don't want to be adding to people's trauma response. You know what these pictures look like. You've heard these stories. I don't need to go into those details for you. So this is a great question to explore of how do I help my firefighter when they've had one of these calls. So before we go into how you are going to help them, right, to go into action, I want to take a step back and really look at, from our early episodes, we talked about the foundation of change, this 3-step process. And I want to review that, because before we get into tips and tricks and warning signs or anything like that, we really have to go through this process of understanding how you are an agent of change in your life and how you are at your most powerful. So it's this process, this 3-step process of the foundation of change. So like I said, you can go back and listen to some earlier episodes. I'll give you a little overview here quickly, but basically it's a 3-step process. The first step, it starts with you, where you are right now. And then the second step is asking you, where do you want to go? And another way of putting that is, what's the goal, or how do you want to show up? And then the third step, the third piece, is when we get into action. Oftentimes, we find that people are really focused on the action part, because the first 2 parts are much more internal. And the action part is external. You're in action, like something happens in the world. Ready, set, action in the movies. Something's actually happening in the world. So those are the things that we see. So we oftentimes focus on just those things. But if we don't take the time to actually build all 3 of these parts that go into your foundation, those action steps end up falling short. The classic way that we see this falling short is, think about how many times people go on a diet, right? Maybe that's you. Been on a diet, you get some action tips, you're told what to eat or told what not to eat, and you do it for a little while, you stick to it, you get some success, and then lo and behold, sometime in the future, you gain that weight back again. And that's because the focusing on the action is only a third of the equation. We miss the other 2 steps. The person was the, let's just say, overeater before is still there. That person hasn't changed. You haven't changed, if that's you, meaning you in the general, right? Hasn't really changed. And you've just worked on this one leg. If you think of a stool and you only had one leg of the stool that was functioning, right? It's not going to work. It's going to tip over. So when it comes to supporting our firefighters who've had a hard call, we really want to start with you, right? We have to start with you. So when your firefighter has a difficult call, we want to just sort of see and give space to what you are thinking about. What are you making it mean? What do you make the call mean? What do you make your spouse's reaction or non-reaction mean? It's human nature to evaluate and to judge, want to go in and correct things or to fix things. Right? This is where we've got these big brains. They like to go into use. So they go in this way. And especially as an adult, you're very used to evaluating and judging, which does come into criticizing and correcting and fixing and making wrong. So this is why it's really important for us to notice this. It's also human nature to want to hide or be defensive. If you notice in yourself of shying away from your partner's actions or inactions, right? And I want to leave space for both. It could be that your firefighter comes in and tells you all about it and is very upset. Or it could be they don't say anything about it, but you heard it on the news. Or it could be that they come home and they just sleep, or they go into the yard and cut firewood and bang something out. There's lots of different ways that our spouses will respond to their work, right? To these difficult calls at work. And you'll find yourself that you will have a reaction to it. So you want to start with, where am I? What is my reaction? Why am I reacting like this? Let me just be curious about it. Because when we're not in that space, we're just going to go from wherever you're at. Your actions are going to be driven by the way that you're evaluating the situation. And it may or may not be exactly the way you want to be coming from if it's your highest, best self. One of the questions that you might ask yourself when you're in this space, when you're taking that 10,000-foot view, is, why do you have a desire to help your partner? Why do you want them to maybe change or to feel better or feel different or act different than they are? It may seem like an odd question because we kind of operate with this underlying belief or underlying that the goal in life is to be happy. Don't worry, be happy. There's a whole sign about it. There's a whole sticker campaign with happy faces. This goal is not terribly useful because the reality, the full human experience, includes being happy and sad, things being good and bad, having highs and lows. It's this contrast of emotions that makes the full human experience. So we want to give some space to see, do I want them to change so I feel better? If they're not sad, then I'm doing something right and I can feel better. That could be something that's going on. Now, again, no judgment here. I have no judgment for you. I know these thoughts myself. I work with them myself. It's letting yourself be open to what is there. Why do I want them to change or act differently? Where is that coming from? When we think about the normal human response and the normal human experience to have this contrast of emotions of happy and sad and highs and lows, it makes me think of a conversation I was having with a mom with a young child who, this child would be sad and upset when dad left for work, or if they went and visited dad at the station and then it was time to leave, she would be upset. And mom was asking, What should I do? Is there a way to prevent my child from feeling sad? Will my child stop feeling sad when they're a little bit older? What can I do to fix this? This might be a similar kind of way that you are feeling with your spouse. When we talked about this, and we really thought through the lens that this is a normal experience for your child to feel sad when dad's away at work, when they separate, and how beautiful it is that your child is able to have this feeling of sad with you, that they're not alone in it, that they can now learn that it's okay to feel sad, that they can learn that sad feelings come and then they move on, and that the sad feelings might come back again and they move on again. For young children, this process can happen really quickly because their brains are not as developed to be thinking about the future or worrying about the past, right? This is why kids under 3, impulse control is a big deal. It's why you hold on to their chubby little hands when they get close to the road, even though they kind of have an idea that cars are out there. Their impulse control just isn't that great. They just don't have developed brains yet. And so it's a really beautiful thing, they have all these big emotions, right? It's this prime opportune time to let them experience them and move on from them and know that it's not wrong to feel this way, that it's a natural process, that nothing's gone wrong. We don't have to fix or change it. We don't have to hide from it, right? We can just be in it, and then we can move on from it. And there might be another thing that comes up and we feel sad, and we can be sad for a little while, and then we can move on from it. The problems come when we are taught that it's a problem to feel this way, that something's wrong with us, that something has gone wrong, that something should be fixed or something should be changed, or we shouldn't show it. This is where we get problems and we get stuck. Perhaps you were taught some of those things. I know I was. And so it shows up when I go to comfort my partner when they've had a bad call. These beliefs and mistrust of how feelings operate. So we really want to start there, because the way you are thinking and feeling is going to greatly impact the way you show up for comfort. All right, the second step is where you want to go. So right now, maybe you're in a hurry to fix the pain or to tell them what they're doing is wrong. Maybe they should be talking, or they should be crying, or they shouldn't cry so much, or whatever. Is that really the way that you want to show up? Really, we want to drop into and see, how do I really want to feel? How do I want to show up to comfort them or to be with them in this process? Not what you want them to do or not to do, but it's about how you want to show up. They are their own autonomous human being that is allowed to think and feel and act in the world any old way they want to. We cannot control them. It's not our business to try and control them. It doesn't work. There have been loads of people in the world who have tried that, and it doesn't work at the end of the day. You get to choose for yourself how you want to show up. How do you want to be thinking and feeling? I really got to see this play in action in a surprising way for myself. Recently, I had a conversation with another mom. This was not a coaching conversation. I was not in coaching zone. I was not in a clean space at all. And it was about our children. And we have different opinions about how to parent our children and how to parent our children when they are together. So this mom comes in to have a conversation with me, and I showed up like a rebellious teenager. I was defensive and I was judgmental of both her and myself. I was not showing up with any kind of curiosity or love or allowing. And it wasn't great. It wasn't a great conversation. She stormed off. I was left a little, whoa, what the heck happened there? I didn't know what the conversation was about, what was going to be about. And so I was a little in shock and awe from the conversation. But I used it to be in wonder, right? Because that's not how I usually show up to a conversation. And I realized, oh, right. With my spouse, I spend a lot of time on this second step. I spend a lot of time developing this second step in the presence of my spouse, which is I show up with love and curiosity and allowing my partner to be who they are and not try and control or change it. And I'm not trying to, also allowing me who I am, that we both have a place of rightness. There's a commonality of working together. This didn't come overnight. This isn't something that, I mean, we had some of it in our younger marriage. Of course, I don't think we were completely without it, but we have upped the level of it, let's just say, after we went through our own time of crisis and made our way through it and really practiced with coaching how to really show up. So I'm very well practiced of showing up with my spouse in this very generous, loving space that I don't bulldoze into those kinds of conversations. And I wasn't practicing that with this other mom. I was practicing being judgmental and critical. And even though in my good space, I am not like that all the time, but I knew the way I reacted so quickly that I'm probably spending more time in this judgmental zone than in this loving zone. It's not something that I had practiced with her. But I do practice it with my spouse on purpose over and over again, because of course, this is one of my very most important relationships. And by the way, it helped inform me with this other relationship that I don't value as highly, but I do have value in it, right? I can go back and I'm using my coaching to go back and to work with that conversation too. Anyways, that's kind of a side story there. But just to really show, it's very powerful, this second step of really seeing how you be in integrity with yourself, of how you want to be thinking and feeling when you do the third step, which is to get into action, is to lean into being with your spouse in their discomfort. One thing, if you haven't seen this diagram before, and here's one of these tips, since we're in the action part of it, you might want to Google circles of grief. It's a great there's lots of just pictures of it. You can see, I'm not exactly sure who developed it first, but it's a very simple diagram that shows at the center is the person who's directly affected from, let's just say, a negative event, right? So that might be the person whose house burned down, or the person who is most closely related to somebody who died, right? And then from there, you have these concentric circles that go out. And we use these circles. So you've got at the innermost, the most affected person, and you get least, as you move away from the circle, you are less directly affected. So you, as the spouse, is a further out circle from that actual originating grief than your spouse is, because you weren't there. And whoever you tell when you come to me for coaching, right, I am a step out of that circle as well. I can empathize and understand and may have shared stories and commonalities, but for that particular grief, I would be one step out, you would be a step in, your spouse is a step in from that. The family of whoever had the incident is further in, and so on and so forth. The point of this chart is that everybody, whoever's on a further out circle, their job is to give comfort in. And the people who are in the innermost circle, it is their job and their place to dump out, to express out in their way, whatever that is. It's not our job as an outer circle to lean in and tell and control and advise, right? It is our job in a further out circle to give comfort in. Now, there can be a space to offer some particular ways to process feelings. But that's really what you want to do is you want to be very careful when you're on the outer circle that whatever you are wanting to give or do to somebody who's further in that circle is you want to think about, I like to think about consent, going over to conversations about sex, right? Consent, that you can offer something with asking for consent, right? You can be there to comfort, to just be with and allow the dumping to come towards you, to have the dumping come out. Both of these things are very useful. I'd start with the one that is just allowing whoever is in a tighter in circle to do and feel and act and be the way that they need to. And your action is to give presence to that, to give witness to that. Go back and think about the story with the young child. It's not the job, parent can't actually fix the pain of the child, right? When the child is crying and screaming and whatever it is that they're doing to display their discomfort, but the parent can be with them to let them know they're not alone. I hear you and I see you in your pain. There's no judgment or criticism or correcting of your pain. There's belief and holding space for you that this pain can move through. This is a very essential role of the person who's giving comfort in. When we ask questions like, is this enough? Should I be doing something more? We want to go back and see those original questions that we talked about of you. Where are you? Why are you asking those questions? Some other tips and other things that people can do around having big emotions like this is to have ways to process those emotions. Those things are things like talking about it or crying, meditating, doing yoga, doing a meditative movement practice like swimming or Tai Chi or some other energy healing work. There's lots of different ways to process emotions, EMDR, movement therapies, talk. There are different ways that I work with people to process their feelings and emotions. But again, let's go back to that person that you're looking to bring comfort to is an adult human being who has their ways, and we want to allow and give them space for that. You can offer some of these other things and allow them to accept or decline. The other thing that you can do, the old saying of do as I say, not as I do. We have this saying, do as I say, not as I do. But we all know behind that is that everybody follows what other people do more than what they say. So simply telling somebody, do breath work or do meditation or cry it out or hit the punching bag, right? Bombarding somebody with advice in this sort of way. The other step you can take is learn to process your own feelings. This takes us back to step number 1, is to have a way and show how you take care of yourself, how you do true self-care, how you can process your emotions and your feelings. Not to do it as a look at me, I'm so great. I know you wouldn't do that anyways. But it's this subtle way of leading. Do what I do, not what I say. Did I mean to say that like that? I'm going to say so. I just realized I flipped the common saying, but I think it's appropriate. It's probably why I did it. Anyways, all right, you guys, that was a long one. It was a lot of information. Take a look at the blog post about worry. See if there's some other tips there that can help you. As a person who's in a further out circle, I am here. I am here for you to help you learn how to process your emotions, how to give true self-care to yourself so you can be demonstrating that, you can have the benefits from that, so you can hold that space for your partner. All right, my darlings, be committed, be present, show up with curiosity and love for yourself and your spouse, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you can get every episode. And when you are ready to be in action, come find us. Facebook, Instagram, or our website. It's all the same name, relationshipsonfire.com. We've got that S on there. There's lots of us having relationships. So relationships with an S on fire.com. Thanks so much. Saying goodbye, your fire and water gal, Cori Myka. See you next time.